Welcome to another episode of Grace Under Pressure, where my guest today is Craig Lemasters. I will tell you all about Craig in just a moment. Grace Under Pressure is an interview show that poses questions to thinkers and doers like Craig who are making a positive difference in our world. Grace Under Pressure reveals what's too often dismissed as the soft stuff, the caring, the connecting, and commitment we feel toward others. Excuse me. Grace is the generosity we show, respect we show, and compassion we demonstrate. When you do it as a leader, like Craig is, it acquires the ability to act for others and pull people together for common cause. Welcome, Craig Lemasters.
Thanks so much, John. Love being here. Love your message and your show, and it's a privilege to be with you today.
Well, thank you. Craig has an interesting background, and I love the first line of his bio because it says, I'm an operator. Now, some people might take an operator as, is that shady? But not with Craig, because he's all about execution. And he's got the bona fides to back it up because he's been a Fortune 500 CEO and now runs a very successful advisory firm. So, as Craig says, he says when he was climbing the ladder, he felt that he was kind of by himself with no one to turn. And so, but he discovered some things about himself and organizations' work and how to become more effective. And now he runs an Atlanta-based advisory firm, or he ran an Atlanta-based Assurance Solutions in 2005. It was in the credit insurance industry, and he built it into a more successful enterprise. Now he's the CEO of his own company called GXG, and he's the CEO. And he talks all about bringing people together and all about a message of execution. So, Craig, welcome.
Thank you so much, John. Yeah, no, thank you so much. I like I said, I really appreciate being here and love to talk about this concept of getting unstuck. So always appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, you have an exciting concept. So first off, we are in the second year of our pandemic. You work with a lot of executives. You've been in the saddle yourself. Well, you're still there, but you're in an advisory role now. So what are you hearing from your clients, and what might we take away from that?
Yeah, no, certainly challenging times. And the way I look at it, John, it's an extraordinary opportunity, I think, for leaders. And we see that in our practice now. I get to work with leaders all over the world, much like you do. And it's really separating, I think, leaders at this point and those that are really stepping up in this time. But what I hear, and there seems to be two general themes. One is leaders struggling with morale, motivation, sort of as a bucket. I don't think it's any mystery that particularly the lockdown part of this situation is really, really hard on the mental health of everyone. And that emerges in an organization. So that's one bucket, the whole morale, motivation. The other one I'm saying is, how in the world do we grow on the backside of this? It's almost like we had this year of being in timeout as a parent of 4 kids. I think of a lot of parenting analogies. It was like we had this timeout for almost a year, and now we got to grow. And so those are the two buckets that I just hear every day right now. And they're very real. I mean, I would agree with both of them.
Without question. So speaking of growth, and it's right over your left shoulder, your book called Unstuck. So tell us about the challenges you felt as a CEO of a publicly traded company, and what led you to write this book, Unstuck?
Yeah, I mean, I had the privilege, as you mentioned earlier, John. I mean, I got to run a big company actually for 11 years, which in public company terms, that's exactly 44 quarters.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
If you get that, I mean, it's an amazing opportunity, but pretty intense, and I loved it. So over that long period of time, I kind of got to see most of the challenges, but the two things that I found very, very challenging and hardest were obviously the people part. I mean, how do you find, retain, and keep and motivate the best of the best in terms of people, and particularly leadership teams? Mm-hmm. The other part, which is actually connected, is the growth part. My passion became, any good any good business is going to bump up against the wall, and we've got to get outside of our core and go do some new stuff. Right now, I'm a consultant advisor on the back end, so I use operator terms. I don't use fancy consulting terms, so I call it new stuff, and that's what we have to do. Leaders have to go find the new stuff, and that's when I started calling it stuck and unstuck. That's where I got stuck the most. We were really good at our core business. Then all of a sudden, core business is bumping up against the end of the road. It could be because of a crisis, but it's usually just you're running out of gas.
Right.
So you've got to go create the new. And that's where I found I got stuck. So this became very personal to me. And I just had the good fortune when I decided to leave public company life. I just thought, wow. And you mentioned this earlier. I bumped into these amazing, wise people that taught me a few things that helped me get unstuck. What if I went and built a little firm around that, and maybe other leaders this would resonate with? And it's been an awesome journey for 4 years, because I think the message is resonating. We got to grow. We have to do new stuff. And we kind of know the traditional ways to do this. Are there other methodologies? And that's when I decided to write the book. It started to work, and actually clients motivated me to write the book, because they said, this is simple ideas, but we're getting dramatic improvement and results. You ought to put this on paper. So wrote the book, and here we are. I got my little book. It's a little over 100 pages. So
I have a copy right here.
Thank you.
First of all, it is well written. It's got some great information, but even better, it's amply illustrated, and it's really well put together. So I want to compliment you on
appreciate that.
But you mentioned something to me, and this is there's a theory in organizational management, not real popular, but that organizations or companies have a lifespan.
Yeah.
And whatever it is, they've got a run of 10, 20, 30, 50 years. And after that, time to do something different. So I got a feeling that's what you are helping organizations overcome, that stuckness of an end of a life cycle or whatever.
Yeah.
Am I correct in that?
No, that's exactly right. And our goal is to help people get out in front of it. And, and you mentioned, like, what do I hear about this? Why are people obsessed with growing after the pandemic? Well, things changed in the pandemic. That's a given. Right. So the question is, what are we going to do? Our business models have to morph. We have to do new stuff. And again, that's where we get stuck. And it can be at the end of a business life cycle. I think more and more, though, John, it happens way before that. Way before. I mean, if we're really good at making a cup of cold brew, which I just happen to have right here, and we wake up one day and say, we got to make pens. The only way we're going to make it in the future is to make pens. Well, guess what? Making it from an execution and operator perspective, making cold brew and pens, pretty different stuff. Doesn't mean we can't make the pens, but boy, we better have a thought process and a methodology to acquire what I would call the wisdom to be able to do that. And this is where I hear it over and over every day in our practice now from leaders of all size companies, even big Fortune 10 companies that we deal with now. This is what I hear. It's like, wow, it's easy around the core. We're really good at that. Right. But at the minute we step out of the core, I would argue our own wisdom doesn't drop off incrementally. It's exponential.
Right.
It's exponential. And I only say that because it happened to me. And now I've talked to hundreds of leaders around the world. They're like raising their hand going, same with us. We're stuck. If that's how you define stuck, then we're stuck too.
Great. What you bring a different perspective to this, because as an operator, with an emphasis on execution. And quite frankly, I think a lot of CEOs kind of take it for granted because they're what I call it the stratosphere, the strategosphere.
I like that. Yeah.
Way up there, and where everything is blue sky and everything is possible. But then, of course, putting those strategies into place through the tactics and building them out, as you well know, that's execution. And organizations I find that are the best executors are operators like McDonald's, the franchise network, that kind of stuff, but also salespeople. Do you find in that? I mean, salespeople is give me the plan and the product, but I can execute it. So is it all about planning, Craig, or what's your jumping off point? So. Yeah,
I mean, mine is, and that's why the book ended up being so short, John, is that it started out at 250 pages.
Short books are good.
And then we started realizing that the methodology is actually straightforward. There's only 3 or 4 critical steps to get unstuck using our methodology. And to answer your question specifically, the way I think, and salespeople are a good proxy for this. But number one, it starts with humility. Do we have the humility as leaders to admit we don't know everything? That sounds simple, but shockingly, how many don't? So
No,
that's step number one.
One of my favorite sayings is, they teach many great things in business school, but one of them ain't humility.
No,
So,
no. And again, I get it, because when we're in our core business, it's easy to lose humility if we're doing well. We're growing double digits, our stock price is going up, board's happy or whatever. It's kind of hard. I mean, I do get that. I'm probably guilty of that. I'm sure I am.
Sure.
But here's the key, John. When we step out of that, and all of a sudden we got to go do something different. We got to do the new stuff. That's when we have to be humble. So number one is humble. Number two is what you just described. It's shocking to me how many leaders can't define the destination for me. Right. And I'm not talking about 100-page, consulting deck or a big PowerPoint. I don't like PowerPoint. Just tell me the destination and be super specific. I don't care what it is. I call it A to B in the book. It's going from point A to point B. Just tell it to me.
Well,
draw a picture if you need to.
Okay, a colleague of mine, David Noor, who lives in your woods, Noor Associates, right, in Atlanta, and talked about working with a client just like that, who said he was saying word about the future, and then he hands him a 65-page deck, and he goes, "That's not a future. That's a big deck." So,
it is, and we get so. I think we get so. I call it the circle of stuck. We get in this circle of stuck where we kid ourselves that activity and volumes of meetings and decks and conversations is solving things. And it's not. If we get a whiteboard, and if I could show you my office walls, it's just whiteboards and flip charts here, because I just want you to define the destination, right? And to your point, yeah, sometimes salespeople are actually better at that, but we got to do that organizationally. And I don't care how big or granular it is, it doesn't matter, but define it. And the third piece is this is where our secret sauce comes in. I define wisdom, John, as the unique intersection of both knowledge and experience. Okay. And I want that to sink in for a second. It's super important to me. There's lots of definitions of wisdom, but it has to be both. And this is the secret sauce, because if I've defined B, my destination, then what I would challenge your listeners and watchers today to do this is just draw a simple ecosystem. Put your destination in the middle. We know what an ecosystem is. It's 3 or 4 bubbles. And what the bubbles are is, to get to the destination, what are the buckets of wisdom, knowledge, and experience that are imperatives to get there? Okay, that you have to have, right? And again, this is my story. What I was struggling with was our digital transformation, and it's really hard for a 100-year-old insurance company, blah, blah, blah. When we actually did this and started to figure this out a little bit on our own, it was shocking, because we knew the destination. We knew exactly what a great digital company looked like for ourselves. We were pretty good at that. Okay,
well, that's a positive.
That was the positive. Here's the negative. We had the arrogance to think that we could just go do that because we had been a great credit insurance company. And that's where I learned the humility lesson really hard, because I'm wasting tens of millions of dollars. So we start drawing the bubbles and say, okay, well, here's 3 bubbles. How about like data? We got to be really good at data. Okay. And we look around the room and say, okay, let's score ourselves. Of our senior team and our 7,000 employees in the company, what's our data score? Do we really have knowledge and experience? And the reality was we were like 30-40% of where we needed to be. Right. So here's the fun part. If you do this exercise and you go around those circles, we've been doing this for 4 years nonstop, the average score is less than 60%, meaning the knowledge and experience, aka wisdom, that we have today is 60% of what we need to get to be. And yet we tend to run around. It's a generalization, I get it, but we tend to run around saying, hey, board or boss, here's our B, we're going to go get there. When I do this exercise, even with really big companies, it's so much fun, because we get to the end and they're self-scoring it, right? It's not scientific, it's just a self-score. It's just an assessment. Here's where I think, and they usually get like 50 or 60%. The first thing they want to do is change the game. Oh, I didn't mean that answer. Right. Yeah, And I said, no. Right. What we need to do is we need to look around the room. This is a senior team, and let's pick somebody to go down the hall and tell the boss that we got 60% chance to get to the most important destination, right? Nobody wants to do that. So my only question is, how do you do that?
It's called fear.
It's super fear. And I wouldn't do it. That's a career limiting move. Yeah. But here's why it's an important exercise. And again, I just urge people to do this, just this honest assessment, because we can go find that wisdom. You know what? It's all around us. if we're really intentional and thoughtful about what we're missing and how we can go borrow it from other people, and that's the title of the book, right? How to leverage, how to go activate this wisdom of others.
Well,
To
here's
help.
what I want. Here's okay, Greg. This is what I want to raise you. So
Yeah,
you have a company, and they've got the guts to do the self-analysis, and they come
yeah.
up with a score of 60, and okay, we have an A, and we want to get to C, and we're stuck in B. Okay,
Yep.
and you just said we want to go to that next place, but we don't have the talent. So, or I said the word talent. So where is that talent or skills coming from? Inside or outside the organization?
Well, it can be both. All right. So maybe that wisdom is actually in the organization, and we haven't been granular enough to say, okay, it's not just data we got to understand. It's this subset of it. I call it swim lanes of wisdom. So it might be in the organization. Most likely it's not. If this is new stuff, right, that it probably isn't. So then the question is, can you go hire all these people immediately and find it? And you probably don't even need it long term. What if we could go borrow the wisdom, right? What if we could go find the wisdom and we asked people in the right way, we facilitated the conversation in the right way, and we quickly learned and acquired that wisdom? Wouldn't that be a better approach? And literally, that's all we do. It is not a high-tech business model. We teach people how to find the wisdom, how to activate it. And so while you're getting to be, you're actually learning, you're getting the knowledge and the experience. So you're doing
Well,
both.
you said an operative word that I didn't. Well, I'm using the word operative there, right there. That's good.
I love it.
Shame on me. Anyway, but you said the word hanging on to something. You said borrow that. So what does borrow mean in this context? Does it mean hire a consulting firm? Does it mean read books? Craig, explain to me.
All helpful. And here's how I would frame it. Back to my wisdom form that I'm obsessed with. So this is why both components are important. There are so many sources of knowledge. And I would argue traditional consulting, most knowledgeable people you could ever look for. Books are amazing. We acquire lots of knowledge from books. Education, all important. So don't get me wrong. I'm not anti any of that. What's missing from that is the experience, right? And we only get that through time and experiences, right? And so if you find a person that has both, the likelihood of transferring that wisdom to me is very high and very fast. Okay. And this is what we tend to miss because we want an easy way to do this. So when I was stuck on China, we were trying to go to China at my company, right? I just wanted the big $4 million consulting deck, and I got it, 350 pages. It's going to tell me how to do it. So why didn't that work, John? Why didn't that work? I mean, I paid a lot of money for it. Smartest grads ever put it together.
Well, I'm going to guess before you tell me. No ownership of it.
Yeah,
right?
no ownership, and there was no experience in it. It had all of the academic research and reasons. And guess what? This is actually when I was introduced first to this concept that we made into GXG. This person shared with me and said, hey, what if I had got you to talk to 4 people who had 100 years of experience in China? Would that be helpful? I'm like, let's give it a try. 4 one-hour conversations, and I made more progress than I had in 3 years. And that event changed the way I thought about how leaders should learn. Now, why did that work? Yeah, they had tons of knowledge. They had done all the consulting decks and read all the books, and they had lived there 25 years each. So what did they tell me that was different? They shared their experience. Said, Craig, why are you possibly talking to that government official? They're not going to help you. How about this one? Don't work with this family, work with this family. Don't hire this group of people. And guess what? That's only experience, and that can't show up in the academic knowledge. So It's both. And so what I would argue, John, is if you do your homework, and it takes some time, but you do your homework and your diligence on what wisdom do you really need, those bubbles, and then you're intentional about finding it. And those people are everywhere. They're not fancy people. They're people like you and me that have operated stuff, and we've had experiences, and we have knowledge. And here's the beauty of the whole business model. This is why people can do it themselves. You don't need GXG to do this. We love to help people, and we do it efficiently, but you don't need us, because this whole spirit of reciprocity is alive and well. And here's the key, is if you ask people, wise people, in the right way with very specific requests, they will help you beyond your comprehension. And it's so much fun because they get joy out of it. They help you. And you know what they get out of it? They end up learning a whole bunch of stuff themselves. That's how we've built our whole company.
Okay, I love this concept because I've talked to folks. There's an authority that I know here at University of Michigan, Wayne Baker.
Absolutely.
Teaches a lot about reciprocity, and his new book is not dissimilar to the theme of yours in the sense all you have to do is ask and ask for help, but we have our barriers to that. So what's the strategy? If I'm a CEO and I say, okay, Craig, I'm stuck and our business is okay, but we know we need to do something else. So, and where do I find 4 wise men or 5 wise women or whatever it is? So where do I go?
Yeah, so you're stuck on the pen. You got to be in the pen business, John, and you just decided that. What are the 3 bubbles? What are the 3 buckets of wisdom that you don't have today, or they're very low? So let's be really specific on what we're looking for. What knowledge? And we actually have people go through a simple worksheet, which is what is the knowledge and experience? What does it look like? What is it? I mean, literally write it out or draw a picture of it. How many years? What is it? And then we go find those people. Now, if we're helping somebody, we go find them because we have a massive network. Here's how you can do it yourself, right? Research, go to every conference you've ever been to on that subject, or go look it up. And you know what's amazing? And we get people to do it all the time, particularly in our speaking practice. Say, look, just try this tomorrow. Go to the last, and there's a million virtual conferences right now. People are speaking and helping there because they love sharing their wisdom. Sure. That's why we do that, quite frankly. I mean, it can be business development. It's usually because we want to. So go call or send these people a very thoughtful request and say, hey, I'm missing this bucket of wisdom. John, I know you are the best at this particular leadership aspect that I am struggling with, and you've been working on this for 20 years. And based on everything I've read about you, you are the wisest person I can find. Would you spend an hour sharing that wisdom with me? Mm-hmm. Now, what are the odds that you would do that? Right? Pretty high, pretty darn high. I would say high because our rate is in excess of 90% of all the people we reach out to like that. And we're super honest with them. We would like to, now we do it in advisory board formats and one-on-one conversations. You can do it anywhere, but have a conversation with them, right? Let's stop spending time. There's nothing wrong with networking. I'm not anti-networking, but networking is generic. It's community, super important. But let's spend some of that networking time being intentional and say, hey, wait a minute. I'm stuck on the pen business because I don't know how to make ink. Let me go find the 3 people that have wisdom in making ink, and I'm going to reach out to them, say, I need 1 hour of your time, and I'll be happy to help you on anything I can help with you. And we actually say, and we describe it in the book, I give the whole methodology away in the book and say, here's how you reach out to them. Here's how you ask them. Here's how you facilitate the conversation. And then what you do is you act on these things. So if you have 3 of these conversations, you're going to acquire 90% of the wisdom you need to move forward. And this is what excites me on my whole fascination is with leadership, because I got to run a big company for a long time. And it's like, how do we get better as leaders? We call them unstuck leaders. You might call them agile leaders and all these different terms. We call them unstuck leaders. Unstuck leaders move faster and they make better decisions. How do they do that? I would argue if you move back from that agile unstuck leader, the challenge when we don't do that is our lack of confidence. Right? We have tremendous confidence in our core business. We've been doing it a long time, and you should. If you don't, that's a different problem. But I would argue when we get outside of the core, the confidence again goes down exponentially. Why? Because of the wisdom.
Right.
So I back up one step further. If we can fill up the wisdom bucket, the confidence goes up, and we see companies make decisions. We have so much feedback. It's so much fun in these little formats we do, because they're like, wow, we've been in this circle of stuck for 2 or 3 years, and in 20 minutes, we made all these decisions. I said, you know why? Because these wise people are sitting here with you. They've done it. They've gone before you, and they did it, and it gave you the confidence to go make the call. That's all. That's the business model.
That's good. But let me take a step back from here, because I'm sure you've had this conversation many, many times, because successful people in their business, and they're doing okay, but they're stuck, but they know they need to do something else, develop a new line of business, but it's out of their comfort zone. And it's because it's out of their comfort zone, there's fear. So what's the conversation you have with senior leaders when they say, you know, Craig, we don't know anything about the pen business or X. So
that's right.
What's the gig? What do you tell them?
Yeah, well, again, I'm an action-oriented person. You can probably tell, John.
No, I
All,
can't. You gotta raise up your game a little bit
all
there.
I'm going to do is get out my marker and say, okay, first of all, you've taken the first step, which is to have the humility to say, I don't understand it. The bigger challenge is, oh no, I know how to do that. And then I look at the results and say, but you haven't. So let's be candid. Okay. So they've already said, I don't know anything about the pin bits. So I'm just going to get out the pin out and say, okay, let's draw the 3 buckets. What are the 3 imperatives of wisdom to be in the pin business? And let's actually be very granular about this, because you actually may know more than you think you do. You're probably doing some stuff that can transfer. And there's usually 1 or 2 things we find that the wisdom quotient is very low. And then we're off to the races. Like, hey, we can go find this, right? If you don't know how to make the cap, we can go find some super wise cap people. And guess what's going to happen? 1, 2, 3 conversations with them. That's it. Your confidence will be soaring. You'll be in the cap business, and you're off to the races in the pin business. That really is. And again, I don't want to oversimplify it, but it is this simple, John. And I'm not talking about solving like little simple things. I mean, we've had a chance to work in, I think, 12 industries, hundreds of engagements. Some of these are highly technical, AI related, all this stuff. Some of them are sales, you mentioned. Some of them are people, org structure, global expansion. It doesn't matter to me what you're stuck on. What matters is wisdom-based learning will fill that gap on any of these topics. Any of them. So that's the methodology I would use in your example.
I love the use of the word wisdom, and I'll be honest with you, because until I met you, I don't know that I've ever married the term wisdom and operation / execution. So, in other words, you bring the concept to life. You make it. What you've done, Craig, is you make it accessible.
I hope so. And that's really back to your initial question, why I wrote the book. And I thought it was great from this client to say, yeah, and we've been fortunate, John, our firm's growing, this has caught on. Our clients tend to keep us there because they get stuck on all kinds of stuff. So I'm not worried about that. What I really wanted to do is share with leaders, this is a way to put some joy back in your job. Because I will tell you, sitting in that chair for 11 years, there is no worse feeling when I'm really stuck on something and I've promised the board I'm going to be in China and make a whole bunch of money for you in China. And I know down in my heart, I'm stuck. I'm not moving very fast and I really don't know what to do. This brings some joy back in that, because after those 4 conversations that I mentioned to you, 100 years of experience, I walked out of it. I can picture it like yesterday. It's probably 7 years ago. I walked down to my CHRO and I just sat down. I was like, clap. She's like, are you okay? I go, am I okay? I just learned more in 4 hours of phone calls than in the 3 years that we've wasted all this money. And she's like, whoa, what'd you do? What happened? And this is all it was. This is all it was.
That's exciting. And we're coming near the end of our show, but I want to ask you one question, because you have been a CEO, you're of a Fortune 500 company. And there's, I want to get your evaluation. Is it lonely at the top? And if so, what do you do about it?
Yeah, super lonely. And again, I don't take that lightly. And part of why I'm passionate about this work, and the first thing I tell, particularly CEOs, when if I get introduced to these amazing people, I get to meet them for the first time, I love to look at them and just say, wow, I can see it on your face. And they're looking at me like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I sat in that chair a long time and I see the stress on your face. I see the angst. I see how hard this is. And I know how hard it is. And my guess is you don't have anybody to talk to. You can go out and tell your peers that you're pretty worried about the future. Bad idea. You're going to go tell the board, career limiting move. Hey, future's bleak and I don't know what to do, right? You're going to go out and have a company meeting. So yeah, lonely, absolutely by definition. What do you do? What I found, and part of why I'm so passionate about this, is it's these wise people, and wisdom has an interesting characteristic. It tends to be very confidential. You find the right people, this wisdom in these swim lanes, they tend to be confidential, and they tend to have a lot of what you base this whole show on, this thing called grace, right? And I define grace, it's more of a biblical definition, but I use it everywhere. This idea of unmerited love, this idea that I'm going to care about somebody regardless. Hard stop. And it means regardless. Like, I'm not getting credit. I'm just going to take care of them. And I promise you, there are so many people out there that will do that. And that's who became my go-to. These people, and quite frankly, they were strangers at first. And then all of a sudden, they just wanted to help me in China or with digital or whatever. And guess what? The job started to feel less lonely. And I had these little wise people around me going, hey, you can do this. we did it and it worked out okay. And so that's my application of your grace concept.
Great. So I think you've just told us a story of grace. Is there something you wanted to add to that, Craig?
Well, I mean, that is from a professional perspective, my story of grace is about the mentors I had. And I would just challenge everybody, because what I think real grace is this idea of people really not looking for recognition. That's my litmus test. And I use it for myself. If I want to be a grace-filled person, am I doing it and would I do it and nobody ever knew about it? And boy, you find a couple of people, and I'm so fortunate to have some of those people in my life that that's been the game changer for me.
Great. Craig, our time has flown by, but I want to say thank you for being on the show today. How can people find you? So
website is clemasters@gxg.co. And my speaker website is craiglemasters.com. Super easy. But let's connect on LinkedIn. We share lots of content out there. Love to share the business model. We're very transparent. So let's connect on LinkedIn as well, Craig Lemasters.
Well, great, Craig. And we'll put that in the website in the notes.
Awesome.
I thank you. You have been a person of grace for us today. So thank you, Craig.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, John.